The air in the office had already begun to taste like tinsel and forgotten promises. It was the final week of December, and the city lights outside, normally a chaotic tapestry of commerce, were now dimmed by a heavy, almost suffocating blanket of festive cheer. But for Elias Vance, cheer was a commodity priced far above his pay grade. He wasn't spending Christmas Eve with family or planning a New Year's kiss. He was staring at an absurdly printed memo pinned right over the office's sad plastic mistletoe. Mandatory staffing, New Year's Eve, midnight shift, Elias Vance, facilities, IT support. The words were a hammer blow. It wasn't just the shift, it was the name, Elias Vance. A name they had trained themselves to spit out like a bad taste. The reliable, utterly disposable resource in the sprawling, gilded corporate machine that was Sterling Global. They had given him this assignment not out of necessity, but malice, a reminder of his place, a final, exquisite humiliation to cap off a year of systematic professional degradation. Sterling Global's headquarters was a monument to their success, a towering structure of glass and polished steel that housed fortunes built on aggressive acquisitions, and, as Elias was beginning to suspect, something far more sinister. The CEO, Julian Sterling, the man who had personally signed the mandatory shift memo, had once been Elias's mentor, a figure of almost godlike admiration. But Julian had changed. Or perhaps Elias had simply been too naive to see the rot underneath the expensive suits and confident smiles. Julian's son, Marcus, the heir apparent, and Elias's direct supervisor, was the architect of the daily humiliations. Marcus saw Elias not just as an employee, but as a punching bag, a reminder that lineage trumped talent every single time. Marcus reveled in it, scheduling emergency weekend tasks, publicly criticizing Elias's work in front of clients, and, finally, assigning him the lonely, bitter privilege of greeting the new year alone, monitoring empty screens while the rest of the executive team popped $100 champagne bottles at a penthouse party 3 blocks away. They called him the Watchman now. Not security, not IT, just the Watchman. The joke was stale, but the sting was fresh. Elias, however, was not the facility's drone they assumed him to be. The Elias Vance they dismissed was a meticulously crafted decoy. The real Elias Vance was a prodigy in financial forensics, a certified public accountant with a network security clearance that could rival military intelligence, and, most importantly, the sole heir to the largest, oldest holding company Sterling Global desperately sought to acquire, Vance Holdings. Elias had not applied for a menial job at Sterling Global. He had infiltrated it. After his father, the head of Vance Holdings, had mysteriously passed away following a failed merger negotiation with Julian Sterling, Elias decided the official investigation was too slow, too clean. He needed proximity, he needed access, he needed to find the truth buried within Sterling Global's impenetrable digital fortress. And the best way to do that was from the inside, operating under the cloak of invisibility granted to the lowliest of staff. He had spent 18 months suffering, smiling, and nodding, installing the very servers he now pretended to reboot, mapping the network pathways he now claimed to be cleaning of spam, all while quietly documenting the evidence he was truly after. He had expected the professional slight, the minor condescension. He had not expected the constant, grinding humiliation. Just last week, during the firm's overly lavish Christmas luncheon, Marcus had forced Elias to serve him coffee, then loudly complained about the temperature, spilling the hot liquid on Elias's hand and laughing it off as a clumsy accident. The room, packed with executives and high-value clients, had chuckled politely. That laughter was the final turning point. The initial mission was to expose fraud. The revised mission was vengeance. The New Year's Eve assignment was the key. Everyone, from Julian down to the most junior analyst, would be gone. The building, a fortress during the day, would become a tomb of silence and opportunity at night. Elias had already ensured the primary security cameras on his floor would be running on a buffered loop, a slight modification he'd made during a routine systems maintenance 2 months prior. The executives had no idea their supposed watchman was, in fact, the ghost in the machine. His plan was a masterwork of digital infiltration. By midnight, when the world was distracted by fireworks and countdowns, the entire unencrypted archive of Sterling Global's financial transactions would be his. He wasn't just looking for simple embezzlement. He was looking for the corporate slaughter of Vance Holdings, the engineered failure that led to his father's death. He had a suspicion, a single coded phrase hidden deep within a proprietary file that pointed to a systemic scheme involving shell corporations and deliberate market manipulation, a scheme that could not only destroy Julian Sterling, but also land him in a federal prison for life. Elias walked the silent halls on December 31st, the only sound the low hum of the HVAC system and the distant, muffled cheer leaking in from the streets below. He wore his standard-issue, poorly fitting gray uniform, the ultimate symbol of his fabricated powerlessness. He knew Marcus and Julian expected him to be miserable, cursing his fate as he sat alone, counting down to a year of continued subservience. They believed they had delivered the final crippling blow of the year. They were wrong. They had, in fact, given him the entire castle and the keys to the deepest vault. The Watchman was waiting. He wasn't just watching the screens. He was waiting for the perfect, digitized moment of retribution. The quiet, freezing night of New Year's Eve was not his punishment. It was his stage. The moment the clock struck 12, the moment the world cheered for a clean slate, Julian Sterling's clean slate would be irrevocably, publicly, and spectacularly soiled. The fraud was massive, but the planned reveal would be biblical. His hands, still bearing the faint burn mark from Marcus's coffee, tightened into fists. This was not a business operation. This was personal. This was the night the disposable drone became the executioner. The documents were loaded, the upload sequence was primed, and the world was about to hear a story Julian Sterling had spent 2 decades trying to silence. The humiliation they inflicted would be paid back tenfold in the currency of utter ruin. He was ready for midnight. The silence of Sterling Global on New Year's Eve was not peaceful. It was deafening, a vacuum where the usual corporate clamor should have been. Every echo of Elias's footsteps against the marble floors served as a drumbeat leading to midnight. This isolation was the final critical element of Julian Sterling's power play against him. Yet it was also the ultimate vulnerability. They had deliberately stripped the building of human witnesses, ensuring that whatever happened, Elias would bear it alone. They had forgotten that in the digital age, a single witness is all it takes to dismantle an empire. Elias began his work precisely at 10:01 p.m. The uniform, designed to make him look invisible, now functioned as a perfect shield. He moved with a confidence that would have shocked the Marcus Sterlings of the world. Not the hesitant, shuffling IT guy, but a surgical operative. He bypassed the main server room's biometric lock, using a temporary override code he had installed during a fire safety upgrade months earlier. The door clicked open, revealing the cold, pulsating heart of Sterling Global. Inside, the servers hummed their billion-dollar secrets. Elias didn't touch the live, external-facing systems. His target was the secure, unencrypted internal archival drive, a digital dumping ground where Julian Sterling believed his most sensitive, decade-old correspondence and financial models lay safely forgotten. The key was a back door, a custom piece of malware Elias had named Auld Lang Syne. He initiated the sequence. The system was robust, but Elias knew its creator better than anyone, because he himself had consulted on the initial architecture years ago, before his cover required him to forget his own brilliance. The hours crawled. On the lone monitor in the security room, A muted broadcast showed the preparations in Times Square, an ocean of people ready to celebrate a new beginning. Elias felt no kinship with them. His new beginning required an ending, a definitive and catastrophic ruin for the men who had orchestrated his family's downfall. He wasn't fueled by rage now, but by a chilling, precise focus. Rage was inefficient. Precision was power. He finally located the encrypted file labeled Project Prometheus. It was the smoking gun. Inside, he found the communication logs detailing how Julian Sterling and his then CFO, Arthur Klein, deliberately undervalued Vance Holdings' core assets just before the market crash, triggering a fire sale acquisition that financially ruined the company and, indirectly, led to the acute stress that caused his father's fatal heart attack. The cold, calculated language of the emails, "The old man is brittle, Arthur. Push the timeline. We need the liquidation before New Year's," was a visceral punch. It wasn't an accident. It was murder, executed with spreadsheets and market maneuvers. He copied everything: financial models, coded instructions to offshore shell companies, the fraud the title promised, and the specific communications regarding Vance Holdings. He verified the file size, over 3 terabytes of incriminating data, meticulously organized for immediate journalistic and federal review. This wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon of mass financial destruction. At 11:30 p.m., Marcus Sterling's smug face appeared on the internal messaging system, a video call initiated from the penthouse party. He looked flushed with expensive liquor and malicious pleasure. Well, if it isn't the Watchman," Marcus slurred, his voice echoing in the empty security room. "Just checking in, Vance. Making sure the servers are counting down properly, huh? Don't want any power outages. Wouldn't want to ruin Daddy's party." Elias forced a weary, subservient smile. "Everything is stable, Mr. Sterling. The systems are green. Good. Now, I have a little favor, since you're already there. And frankly, you're cheap. My father's vintage bottle of scotch, the 62. It's in the vault on the 50th floor. I told him I'd send someone reliable. Go fetch it, right now. I want it before midnight." The request was another calculated act of cruelty, meant to remind Elias that he was still the errand boy, even in the final moments of the year. The 50th floor vault required a special retinal scan and biometric palm print, the very security measures Julian Sterling had once entrusted to Elias's father. "But, sir," Elias stammered, playing his role perfectly, "I don't have the clearance for the 50th floor vault." Marcus's face tightened with irritation. "Then you crawl back down to IT, grab the facility's master keycard, the one that opens the biometric bypass door, and you make it work, Vance. You have 20 minutes. If you're late, you can kiss that pathetic bonus goodbye. Now, hop to it, Watchman. Happy New Year." Marcus ended the call with a drunken, harsh laugh. Elias sat back, his pulse steady. Marcus had just handed him the perfect, final piece of verification: physical access to the 50th floor, the location of Julian Sterling's private office, and, more importantly, the private server terminal where the most sensitive communications were stored, entirely disconnected from the main network. Marcus wanted scotch. Elias would retrieve something far more potent. He retrieved the master key card, a simple white piece of plastic that now felt like Excalibur. He had the digital proof. Now he was heading for the physical theater of the climax. The countdown was no longer for the new year. It was for the inversion. He knew exactly where the penthouse party was happening, and the scotch was the perfect delivery mechanism. The stage was set for the midnight spectacular. The penthouse reception hall 3 blocks away was everything Sterling Global pretended to be: flawless, exclusive, and glittering with shallow confidence. It was 11:55 p.m. The air crackled with anticipation. The drone of expensive conversation momentarily hushed as a projected countdown clock dominated one wall. Julian Sterling, resplendent in a tuxedo, stood with Marcus, basking in the reflected glow of their assembled elite. Major investors, powerful politicians, and the financial press, all gathered to celebrate a year of unparalleled corporate savagery disguised as success. Elias, the Watchman, arrived through the discreet service entrance, clutching the antique Scotch bottle, its heavy glass a chilling prop in his hand. He was still in the poorly fitting gray uniform, a stark, insulting contrast to the black-tie crowd. He was precisely where Marcus wanted him, visible enough to be mocked, yet irrelevant enough to be ignored. "Vance, you actually made it," Marcus sneered, grabbing the bottle. He didn't even meet Elias's eyes, slow but present. "Now disappear back to your hole before you spoil the aesthetic. And don't forget to clean up any spills." The surrounding guests offered smirks and polite laughter, the exact sound Elias had spent 18 months suppressing a violent reaction to. This was the final critical moment of public humiliation. He met Julian Sterling's cold, self-satisfied gaze, and for the first time, Elias did not drop his eyes. Julian, noticing the prolonged, unsettling stare from his lowest employee, frowned. "Is there a problem, Watchman?" Elias set the empty Scotch crate on a nearby service table. The projected clock showed A0A30, 30 seconds to the new year, 30 seconds until the inversion. "No problem, Mr. Sterling," Elias replied, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the festive murmur like ice. "The systems are green. The midnight sequence is ready." Julian waved a dismissive hand, turning back to his guests. "Good. Now get out of here." "I can't," Elias continued, his voice rising, carrying effortlessly across the suddenly attentive room. "I have a mandatory delivery for midnight. You insisted on the timing yourself, sir. You called it a new beginning." Marcus wheeled around, his face suddenly pale beneath the flush of champagne. "Vance, what are you doing? Get out." The crowd was silent now. The countdown was a pulsing red beacon on the wall. 00300, 10. Elias ignored Marcus. He reached into his uniform pocket, pulling out a small, encrypted flash drive, the drive containing all 3 terabytes of Sterling Global's ruin, and raised it high. The action was unmistakable, theatrical. 10 seconds, Elias announced, his voice now ringing with authoritative command. No trace of the Watchman's meekness left. "The company you run, Mr. Sterling, is built on a lie, on calculated fraud, insider trading, and the deliberate destruction of a competitor, Vance Holdings. I know this because for the past 18 months, I haven't been your IT drone." 005. Julian Sterling's eyes were wide with terror, recognizing the name. "Security! Get him!" "My name is Elias Vance," the protagonist declared, throwing his useless uniform jacket to the floor, revealing a flawlessly tailored dark suit underneath, the clothing of an heir, not an errand boy. "And I am the sole surviving heir of Vance Holdings. You gave me the keys to your kingdom, Mr. Sterling. You gave me New Year's Eve alone to plant the evidence I needed." Break 243. The crowd gasped. The financial press reporters frantically pulled out their phones. Elias walked to the center of the room, facing the massive projection screen. He plugged the flash drive into a disguised port he had installed earlier that evening, under the pretense of checking the projector alignment. Joe 1. The projection screen flashed from the final second of the countdown to a stark, terrifying headline. "Sterling Global Fraud. Exposed, billions stolen. Criminal charges pending." A high-definition image of Julian Sterling's signed email, detailing the plan to destroy Vance Holdings, appeared right next to the celebratory fireworks graphic. The midnight bell chimed, marking not the new year, but the death knell of Julian Sterling's career. "Happy New Year, gentlemen," Elias said, leaning into the sudden, shocked silence. "The systems are green. The documents detailing every offshore account and every coded market manipulation are now live delivered to the SEC, the DOJ, and every major news outlet in the country. The fraud you forced me to uncover tonight will ensure that by the time these fireworks fade, Sterling Global will be worthless, and you, Julian, will be under federal custody." Julian lunged forward, his face contorted in a silent scream of betrayal and fury. But Marcus held him back, already realizing the catastrophic gravity of the reveal. The camera flashes exploded in the room, capturing the faces of the accused, frozen in absolute public terror. The inversion was complete. The Watchman was gone. Only the Avenger remained. The humiliation they had meticulously planned for Elias Vance had become the grand televised stage for their immediate, absolute ruin. The victim had just delivered the most expensive midnight show of the decade. His final act of service was the execution of the company.